Hi, I'm Ryder, and you may know me as the Paper Notebook Guy. But in this series of videos, I'll be doing something very different. Tech reviews, albeit a very different kind of tech review. In addition to reviewing 4 interesting gadgets, I'll be reviewing them in context of our very relationship with technology. Tech empowers us in unbelievable ways, but our relationship with technology is troubled. I think it's because we've reached some kind of tipping point. Our tech went from being tools focused on helping us to become superhuman to products focused on simply being super, faster, more powerful, more automated, just more, leaving the human part ever further behind. There are emerging movements like digital minimalism exploring strategies about how not to use tech. And though valuable, I don't think that's the right question. Tech isn't going anywhere because of how much better it can make our lives. That's the question that interests me. How do we use tech to make our lives better? I'll explore this question through the lens of 4 devices designed to address many of the challenges of the digital age. To do this, I'll rate them on a scale that encourages us not to think about only the content of the device, like its features, but also the context of the device within our lives. How will this thing help me create the life that I want? It's a scale to help us find the balance between our potential and the potential of our technology. Somewhere in the middle is this Goldilocks zone where we can use technology to superpower our ability to cultivate what truly matters to us. This is what I call conscious computing. If that's something that's interesting to you, be sure to subscribe to this channel to watch the series. Okay, let's get into it. The promise of technology is to make us happier, healthier, more productive than we ever could be on our own. And in many ways it has. It's allowed me to do things that were not imaginable for any individual not that long ago, especially one with severe learning disabilities. Over the last few years, though, I've noticed a strange pattern. With every new piece of tech I buy, I feel a bit sadder, a bit more indifferent, a bit more distracted. It's like each device feels more like a burden than an upgrade, and I don't think I'm alone in this. There seems to be some kind of dehumanization with each new generation of consumer technology. You don't have to look any further than our phones, a technology that was originally designed to bring us closer together, that is now in many ways complicit in our modern loneliness epidemic. So what happened? To start understanding the problem, you can turn to the father of the iPhone himself, Steve Jobs. Jobs once said that he thought of computers as bicycles for the mind. The idea being that bicycles superpower our innate physical abilities by orders of magnitude. And they do. His vision was for personal computers to do the same for our mind. And they have. He was right. But something happened he didn't anticipate. Bicycles not only allowed us to go much faster and further, they also changed our entire concept of speed. This led to the invention of cars, then planes, then rockets. Have you ever seen those videos of jet pilots doing G-force training? They're going so fast that their faces look like they're melting and they often pass out. They lose consciousness, they're going so fast. Similarly, we all now have access to technology that goes at speeds that our bodies and minds just can't tolerate. In other words, we went from a world that focused on technology to get us from A to point B faster to a world where we can't even come along for the ride anymore. When we think about technology as a scale, we rarely want to be at a 0. That's 0 tech, 100% manual. You're pulling your own wheat, grunting instead of using language, and walking everywhere. So you'd probably die early from the lack of food, shelter, medicine, or democracy. In short, the less tech you have, the more difficult life can become. On the other hand, you don't want to be at a 10 either because it removes the challenges that we need to grow and to find meaning in our lives. If an AI does all of your homework, you learn nothing. If you delegate your thinking, you won't learn how to think. If AI writes for you, soon you won't be able to write. In short, the more automated your life is, the less meaningful it becomes. We now live in a world where the dials seem to be locked in at a 10 permanently. We do this not because we need it, but because it's the default. With every new generation, we unconsciously accept new features and functions into our lives without even questioning it. This unconscious computing is passively, profoundly, and automatically shaping our lives, often for the worst. So the question becomes, how do we wake up and adjust the dials in our favor? Let's take a look. The world is full of inputs, experiences, sensations, information, ideas, and outputs, the things that happen as a result of those inputs. This includes civilization, architecture, math, science, and whatever NPC streaming is. In the middle, there is this process of transforming one into the other, or computing. This is where computers get their name from. They help us with this process of transforming inputs into outputs. The most important computing, though, is happening inside of us. We are constantly computing reality, and technology can either greatly improve or impoverish that process. Since tech is so ubiquitous now, though, we don't even think about why or how we're using technology. We simply use it because it's there, quietly using us. We watch the news, scroll social media, and buy things we don't need because our technology is designed to exploit ancient biological impulses. It targets our fear, desire, hunger, and need for novelty. And the more it feeds us, the less we question it, and the more we rely on it for answers. The problem is that much, if not most, of modern computing does not offer answers. It offers more noise. We're using up our limited resources to process noise that is mostly useless and often toxic to our well-being. Much of this can be resolved by asking one simple question. What are we computing for? We tend to let features determine what we do with tech. I think it needs to be the other way around. To determine the features based on what we want to do. What do you want to create, experience, change, or learn? Once you know those answers, it can help create a new context for your relationship with technology. The most important thing about selecting tech should be its ability to help you consciously create outputs that are meaningful to you. In short, the first thing we want to do to make our computing more conscious is to set an intention. Maybe it's to become a better writer, or start a podcast, or improve your finances. Whatever it is, it will require specific tools. So next, we'll look at how we can pick the right tools for the job. Conscious computing doesn't require us to throw away our tech and all of its advantages. There are plenty of tools, hardware, software, and practical, that can help us take advantage of even the most cutting-edge technology more intentionally. The key is finding tools that help us align with our intention. That's why I created the Conscious Computing Scale. It helps us to evaluate our tech based on our individual needs. And it's broken down into 5 criteria. These criteria exist on a scale from 0 to 10. The twist here is that they are dials. 0 means there is no technology, it's fully human. 10 means that this is fully automated, with little to no human intervention. Neither is inherently good or bad, it all depends on what you hope to create, and then finding a Goldilocks zone that's right for you. The 5 criteria are 1, input. This is about getting information into your mind, essentially. Too little input, and you may not have the information you need. Too much input, and you might be overwhelmed with information you don't need. 2 is throughput. This style is about how to use the information that you get. What are the features available for capturing, navigating, organizing, and handling this information? Too little assistance from your technology can make working with something tedious. Too many features and options, on the other hand, can make something way too complex or overwhelming. 3, stay put. This dial is about how connected you are to the world versus to yourself in the process. Too little connectivity and you won't have what you need to work. Too much connectivity and you risk getting distracted by something completely unrelated to your work instead of staying put. 4 is compute. You can think of this dial as how much of the thinking or work is being done for you. Too little compute and you end up doing all the work yourself and you're limited to your own capabilities. Too much compute, and then you delegate everything to the technology and you risk losing any sense of real accomplishment or ownership of the result. 5 is output, and this is about results. Now, this is something I'm going to get into in a little bit later on, but the short version of this is how well does this technology help you accomplish your goal? How intentional does it help you be? In order to understand this scale a little bit better, I'm going to take a little closer look at each one of these criteria and explain why they matter within the context of conscious computing. Let's dive in. Let's start with inputs. So a book would be a 1 on the input scale, as you're limited to only that much information from one book. An iPhone loaded with apps and notifications bombarding you with information would be a 10 on the input dial. Inputs can be anything from books, articles, podcasts, or videos. The trick here is to set the input dial not from maximum volume, but for the highest signal to noise ratio. Too few inputs and you will have too little signal. Too many and you will be overwhelmed by the noise. Inputs are one of the most important levers that we can pull in helping us compute more consciously. It determines whether we use technology or it's using us. In short, we want tech that makes what we care about front and center. We will explore inputs deeply in my review of the BUJO Palma, a device for curating your input consumption. Throughputs. This dial is about how to use the information that you get. Okay, you can see a blank sheet of paper being like a 1 or a 2 with a throughput because you're doing everything with your hands. All the organization, everything is manual. As opposed to a tablet with Notion installed, for example, that would be like an 8 or a 10. You have many ways to work with information. It can be entered and navigated with a keyboard, a mouse, voice, and it's automatically organizing things for you like dates, folders, users, tags, and so on. The more features our tech has, the more compelled we feel to take advantage of them all. Many of these features, though, are often useless, solving problems we don't have, and that distracts us from the task at hand. On the flip side, we don't want there to be so few features that we struggle to get things done. Have you ever tried to edit a long-form piece with a typewriter? Again, tech should mitigate work that isn't interesting but necessary in helping us capture and organize our thoughts. Next, let's talk about Stayputs. This is the dial about having everything you need to stay focused. So a paperback book would have a Stayput score of, let's say, 1, because there is no connectivity here at all. There is no way for you to hop out of the book. This is the only thing you have access to while you're using it. A fully loaded iPad, on the other hand, would be a 10, as you can effortlessly access all the information from around the world with a simple tap or two. And that can be really hard for us not to take advantage of. The Stayput dial is really about impulse control. When we reach a place in our work that it's hard or boring, it's very hard to resist taking a short social media break that ends up chewing up hours of our time. And even when we are online for work, a quick bit of research can result falling down an internet rabbit hole with little to show for it. On the other hand, some of our work really does require access to data. So it becomes a question of dialing in the connectivity in a way where the most interesting thing about the tech we're using remains the work itself. We want to reduce as much of the fun around the work as possible. We want tech that makes the work the most fun feature, the most interesting thing. It should help you spend as much time as possible staying put with the thing that matters. Sure, there are apps for that, but they're really easily diffused. I think for this issue and most of the above, we have to swim further upstream and look at the devices themselves. Next is compute. Compute is how much of the work or thinking is done for you. So using your fingers to hand calculate some math problems would be a 0 for compute. Using a scientific calculator would be like an 8. And asking an AI to figure out what equation to compute would be a 10, even though it can hallucinate a lot of the time. So don't advise it. Speaking of which, I recently got to use a brand new AI that you can train on your own work. So I asked it to take something that I dictated and transcribe it and then turn it into a newsletter for me. To do that, I fed it a bunch of my best articles. And what it spit out was so good that I had this moment of clarity. 2 future paths revealed themselves before me. The path of production and the path of growth. See, without resistance, our bodies weaken. And the same is true for our minds. We now have very accessible technology that will do the thinking for us. This has been true about computers for decades, but most of that thinking dealt with things that we don't care about, like our car insurance premiums, flight miles, and stuff like that. This is what technology is great for, offloading thinking about things we don't care about. With AI, we risk offloading thinking about things we do care about. Thinking is a skill. By failing to put in the effort to develop original thoughts or better thinking, we risk diminishing our capability to do so. We also become ever more dependent on the things or people that are doing the thinking for us. Be it about history or flowers or politics or children, learning about the things we care about is arguably one of the most rewarding parts of being alive. Sure, we will meet incredible resistance along the way, But that's a feature and not a bug. It's our ability to learn from our mistakes, figure things out, and witness ourselves grow stronger through the process that shapes our view of the world and ourselves. Growth is earned. And for this, I would be very wary of taking any shortcuts. With that said, technology can greatly improve our thinking and collapse our timeline of our own personal cognitive evolution. As I mentioned previously, we can use tech to process things we're not interested in knowing or understanding, so we can focus on what we are. A lot of our major advancements and understanding our universe rely heavily on the use of technology and computing that's done for us. So in this category, it's about how much of the relevant thinking is done by you versus for you, which brings us to the last category, outputs. Yes, outputs are about the result, but I want to talk about our concept of results a little bit. I want to slow down here because I think that this is a critical dial for our time. Technology supercharged our productivity. It allowed us to literally produce more grain, tires, metal, homes, Stanley mugs, whatever. We automatically applied the standard of more being a measure of better to knowledge work as well. But this standard for knowledge is questionable, especially in the age of AI. It used to take a student a few days to write a 1,000-word essay. Now, with AI, they can write 1,000 of those essays an hour for days. Yes, you heard that right. This is already happening. I have a friend who wrote 100 scientific articles in a single afternoon with AI. This would have taken her years to do on her own. When quantity can no longer be the main standard for productivity, then what should it be? As I'd mentioned earlier, the process of creating is arguably more valuable than the output because that's how we hone our abilities. This is how we learn and become valuable to ourselves and to others. The value of the tech we choose should be based on our ability to successfully create offerings, products, or experiences that we care about. With that in mind, I think that the main metric for our output may be integrity. Yes, tech has removed barriers that used to prevent individuals from publishing books, music, videos, YouTube videos, apps. That said, we now have technology that makes things so easy that it can make all the other dials irrelevant. We now live in a time where we can feed in a prompt, and we don't have to worry about the inputs, the throughputs, the stayputs, the computes. It just pops out an article, a song, a book, a calculation, an essay, and soon lifelike videos that we can claim as our own. The question is, how much of you is actually left? The more involved we are, the more present we are in the production of the final result, the greater the integrity of the final result, and therefore the meaning of the work. I know this sounds a bit existential, but I think it needs to be. Why spend any time doing things that add no value to our lives or the lives of others? It may seem like a silly question, but that's exactly what's happening right now without the intentional use of technology. Which brings us to the core of conscious computing. What do you want to create? What is your intention? So for this style, the main question boils down to how far from your intention is the result? A 0 here means that you couldn't achieve a result due to lack of technology, and a 10 would be that the result ended up having nothing to do with you because of your over-reliance on technology. The Goldilocks zone here is that it helped you create an output that honored your intention, a result that you're proud of, and one that helped you grow. Okay, so to quickly recap, we now have the conscious computing scale, which consists of inputs, throughputs, stayputs, computes, and outputs. These will be the 5 dials, the 5 virtues of conscious computing that we'll explore to help us choose the right tools for the job. In the next few videos in this series, I'll explore 4 interesting devices that do common things in uncommon ways, gadgets that may be able to help us compute more consciously. These devices are the good old-fashioned paper notebook, the Boox Palma, the Remarkable 2, and the brand new Daylight computer. Instead of more of everything technology offers, these tools help you dial in the right amount of technology so you can consciously create a more meaningful life. If that's interesting to you, please subscribe to this channel to be notified when the next video in the series is ready. Thanks for watching and taking the time. I'll see you in the next one.